Hi there ladies and gentlemen, this is Eastwood for Life fan, and this is part 4 of my spaghetti western collection, the Blu-rays. And in this video I will be showing my European and US editions. And we'll start off with my French editions that I have, and there's only a few, and I don't normally double dip or treble dip in certain movies, but these trilogy of movies are my favourite trilogy of all time. This one's A Fistful of Dollars, and this is a French digibook release which I bought on Amazon France. It comes in a nice little mini book, and it contains some nice photos, and also it has the DVD and Blu-ray. Fistful of Dollars. Pick these up because these are nice little collector's editions. And this one is the sequel for a few dollars more. And you can pick up these digibooks from Amazon France for price ranges from 15 to 25 euros, which are fairly reasonable. And then the last one in the trilogy, The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, was slightly more expensive than the first two, but nice editions, these that I had to pick up. The only Spanish edition I have is a mid-70s spaghetti western. This is The Stranger and the Gunfighter, starring Lee Van Cleef, directed by Antonio Margheriti. And by the 70s the genre was fading as they were trying different ideas, but this one's a fun watch, kind of martial arts meets spaghetti western. Lee Van Cleef always in very good spaghetti westerns. I have a few German editions, and there's a very good label in Germany, Koch Media or Cook Media, however you want to pronounce it. And on that label they put some of the more rare titles, and this one is Shoot the Living and Pray for the Dead, starring Klaus Kinski, one of the greatest villains on screen. He certainly had the face for it. This one's a late 60s spaghetti western. This one is Last of the Bad Men, starring George Hilton and Frank Wolf, two regular faces featured in many of these movies. And this is on the Western Unchained range. This one is To Pepper, starring Thomas Millian and Orson Welles. And very good movie, this one. Thomas Millian plays a Mexican revolution leader, and kind of feels strange that Orson Welles is in a movie like this, but a very good spaghetti western this, and worth checking out in To Pepper. This one's a early 1970s movie, Man of the East, starring Terence Hill, directed by Enzo Barboni, him and Terence Hill made the Trinity movies, and this is another spaghetti western comedy. Not as popular as the Trinity movies. This is Silver Saddle, starring Giuliano Gemma, in Lucio Fulci's third and last spaghetti western that he made, and this is a late 1970s movie. And that's all my German editions from Koch Media or Koch Media. And another German label, this is Explosive Media, and this is the Death Rides a Horse movie, a classic in the genre, starring Lee Van Cleef. Great edition, and I do need to pick up the Kino US release of this movie. And nice release, this one. Comes in 3 discs, a Blu-ray DVD and a bonus featured disc. This nice digipack, and it comes in with a little booklet of a great movie in Death Rides a Horse, a Lee Van Cleef classic. And on the same label, this is Sabata, starring Lee Van Cleef and William Berger. A great spaghetti western, this one. And the character that Lee Van Cleef plays in this movie is kind of based on the Mortimer character that he played in For a Few Dollars More, of a well-dressed gunfighter. But great movie, and definitely worth picking up and checking out. This comes in a nice digipack of 3 discs, DVD, Blu-ray and a bonus featured disc, and a nice little booklet of photos from the movie Sabata. The last Explosive Media edition I have, this one is A Man Called Sledge, starring James Garner and also Dennis Weaver. This was actually directed by Vic Morrow, but the movie was made in Europe, and it's not a bad one, with James Garner. A Man Called Sledge. Onto my UK editions now. This one's A Fistful of Dollars, the UK release. Nothing special. And the sequel, For a Few Dollars More. Just a shame that in the UK they never really made a more of a better edition. This is The Good, the Bad and the Ugly UK Zavvi Steelbook. And just a shame that they didn't do the Steelbooks in the first 2 movies. But that is Zavvi for you. And don't you just hate Zavvi when they do things like that? I also have the Once Upon a Time in the West Zavvi Steelbook. Great release, this one, and I've kept this one sealed. Of a great spaghetti western with that superb cast, one of the greatest westerns made of all time. And this one was actually limited to a couple of thousand, and it's going for pretty high prices. Once Upon a Time in the West. Some 88 films editions, and this one's Another Heart of Joe, a Sergio Corbucci movie starring Burt Reynolds. And the story goes that Burt Reynolds was very disappointed when he arrived on the set of this movie, thinking he was going to be doing a movie with Sergio Leone, and was hugely disappointed that he got the other Sergio Corbucci. And he said it was one of the worst movies he ever made, but actually I kind of liked Navajo Joe, and it's not a bad spaghetti western. This one is Django Kill, If You Live, Shoot, starring Thomas Millian, and this is the 88 Films slipcover edition, which they only made a couple of hundred copies, but a very controversial spaghetti western. This one, people either kind of like this movie or hate this movie, but definitely one of the best unofficial Django movies. This one, in Django Kill, If You Live, Shoot. This one, another favourite of mine, The Mercenary, another Sergio Corbucci movie, starring Franco Nero and Tony Massanti. This is also known as A Professional Gun. Highly recommended. Great release by 88 Films, and there is a Kino release of this movie in the US. On to some Arrow spaghetti westerns. And this one is Django Prepare a Coffin, also known as Viva Django, starring Terence Hill. And actually Franco Nero was supposed to have been in this movie, but he was on other projects. But the director wanted Terence Hill, a Franco Nero lookalike. And this one's not a bad one for Terence Hill, as it's a more serious spaghetti western. Very similar to God Forgives I Don't, because Terence Hill, most of his westerns were comedy spaghetti westerns, but not a bad one in Django Prepare a Coffin. This one's a must, Day of Anger, one of those great spaghetti westerns starring Lee Van Cleef and Giuliano Gemma. Great transfer, great western. Lee Van Cleef takes on Giuliano Gemma under his wing. Very, very good spaghetti western. Definitely worth checking out if you're new to the genre. Day of Anger, one of the best Lee Van Cleef movies. This one is Kill and Pray, starring Lou Castel and Mark Damon. A nice Arrow release, this one. This one is Cemetery Without Crosses, and this is actually a French spaghetti western. Very, very underrated, highly recommended. And actually Sergio Leone actually directed the dinner scene in this movie. But nice release from Arrow of a great spaghetti western, Cemetery Without Crosses. Very dark spaghetti western, this one. And their recent release, A Pistol for Ringo and the Return of Ringo, starring Giuliano Gemma. Very popular spaghetti westerns, these, as it was one of the first time that an Italian actor was playing the hero, and it made Giuliano Gemma a household name in Europe in the Ringo movies. On to my US editions now. This one's a double feature with two early 60s spaghetti westerns, The Last Gun, starring Cameron Mitchell, and $4 of Revenge with Robert Woods. Fairly average movies. You can pick this up quite cheap in the US. This one is My Name is Nobody, one of my personal favourite spaghetti western movies. Great spaghetti western, this one. And actually, Sergio Leone directed a few scenes for this movie, starring Terence Hill and Henry Fonda. Love the scene where Henry Fonda takes on the Wild Bunch here. And this is a spaghetti western comedy, and it's about a young gunfighter in Terence Hill who wants to retire a legendary gunfighter, Henry Fonda, and he wants him to be remembered. There's some great scenes in this movie. My Name is Nobody. This one is The Big Gun Down. A great movie, this one, and definitely one of the greatest, the best releases that's been released for a spaghetti western, released by Ground House Releasing, and it comes in a beautiful 4-disc collector's set, 2 Blu-rays, a DVD and a CD soundtrack. This is the first Sergio Solima spaghetti western, starring Lee Van Cleef and Thomas Millian. Must have and must buy movie, The Big Gun Down, one of the best non-Leone spaghetti westerns. This one is Hanging for Django, also known as No Room to Die, but they always would put the Django name to sell these movies. This is on the Raro label. This one stars Anthony Stephan and William Berger. Nice transfer, pretty good spaghetti western. This one is the 2 Trinity movies. They call me Trinity, and Trinity is still my name, starring Terence Hill and Bud Spencer. 2 popular early 70s movies which kind of started the trend for the spaghetti western comedies. I'm not a massive fan of the spaghetti western comedies, but very popular movies these were in Italy. Directed by Enzo Baraboni, both movies. This one is Cutthroats 9, and it's actually a Spanish western, also known as a horror western. Cutthroats 9, quite a gory western as well, and this is the Code Red release. I have a few more Code Red editions. This one is A Long Ride from Hell, starring Steve Reeves, former Mr. Universe. He was a star of the Sword and Sandal movies, and this is his only spaghetti western that he made, A Long Ride from Hell. Not a bad one. The last Code Red edition. This is Vengeance, directed by Antonio Margheriti, starring Richard Harrison. And I enjoyed this western. a revenge spaghetti western. Probably Richard Harrison's, probably my favourite western that he was featured in Vengeance. On to some Blue Underground editions. One title that everybody should have. The original and classic Sergio Corbucci spaghetti western, Django, starring Franco Nero. Iconic movie of Django dragging the coffin in a small muddy town. Great scene with the Gatling gun, and this movie made Franco Nero a big name in movies, but definitely one that's worth checking out if you haven't seen. And also Tarantino copied the ear slicing scene in this movie, which he used in Reservoir Dogs, but Django, one of the classic spaghetti westerns. This one is A Bullet for the General, a 1966 spaghetti western starring Gian Maria Volonte and Klaus Kinski. And this movie was actually the first of the Zapata westerns about the Mexican Revolution, and definitely a great spaghetti western, this one. A Bullet for the General, highly recommended, must have. This one is Man, Pride and Vengeance, starring Franco Nero. Klaus Kinski is in this one, but in a small role. And I actually like this one. Among fans, there is quite a bit of hate for this movie because Franco Nero has a love interest in this movie. And some people try to say it's not a spaghetti western, but it's a spaghetti western with a romantic theme. But a good one in Man, Pride and Vengeance. Another Sergio Corbucci movie, and this is Compañeros, starring Franco Nero, Thomas Milian and Jack Palance. A great cast. Also Fernando Reyes in this one. But this is a spaghetti western comedy with a nice balance of comedy and violence. Jack Palance was great in the villain in this one, but definitely a movie worth checking out and highly recommended. One of my favourite spaghetti westerns in Compañeros. And this release has 2 cuts of the movie. Compañeros. And my last stack of US editions. And these are the Kino editions, and this one is Face to Face, the second spaghetti western made by Sergio Solima, starring Gian Maria Volonte and Thomas Milian, a personal favourite of mine. And this one has a nice score by Nino Morricone. Highly recommended. Great spaghetti western in Face to Face. This one is The Unholy Four, starring Leonard Mann and Woody Strode. This was put out on DVD by Wildies, but average spaghetti western, not a bad one. And this is another edition of Sabata, Lee Van Cleef. Great spaghetti western, this one. And the sequel, Adios Sabata, which this time had Yul Brynner in the role. Not a bad one, but nobody as good as the original with Lee Van Cleef. I do like Yul Brynner. Of course, quite surprised he never made any more spaghetti western movies, because he did look good in this leading role. Now Lee Van Cleef returned in the last of the Sabata series, but nowhere near as good as the original return of Sabata. This one is Bad Man's River, and for me, and in my opinion, it was bad. Great cast: Lee Van Cleef, James Mason and Gianni Garco from the Satana movies. And this is an early 70s movie that tried to be funny, but I didn't find it funny at all. Very, very disappointing movie in Bad Man's River. Picked up The Good, the Bad and the Ugly from the Kino label, and I do plan to pick up A Fistful of Dollars and for a few dollars more to complete it. But great release by Kino, and this is the best edition out there of this movie. The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. And the last two that I picked up, I recently bought, and this is A Fistful of Dynamite, which is the title known in the US, but in Europe it's known as Duck You Sucker. Sergio Leone's last spaghetti western, starring Rod Steiger and James Coburn. Very good one, I enjoyed this one. It's a shame that James Coburn wasn't in a few more, because in the 60s he was offered to do quite a few spaghetti westerns. But a very good spaghetti western in A Fistful of Dynamite, also known as Duck You Sucker. And the last one that I have on Blu-ray is Roy Colt and Winchester Jack, starring Brett Housley. And this is directed by Mario Bava, who more known for making horror movies. And actually I haven't checked this one out, but that is all my spaghetti western Blu-rays. So guys, please list some of your favourite spaghetti westerns, or some of your non-Leone spaghetti westerns. And that was all my collection in 4 parts. Had to do them in 4 parts because one long video, it would have easily hit the 2-hour mark. So I hope you enjoyed all 4 parts of my spaghetti western collection. So guys, take care, stay healthy and keep on collecting. Until the next video, take care.